He was a teenager with a violent online presence, a history of disturbing behavior, and a deep hatred boiling beneath the surface. But on February 14, 2018, Valentine's Day, Nicolas Cruz turned his darkness into one of the deadliest high school shootings in US history. Armed with a Smith & Wesson M and P15 semi-automatic rifle, Cruz gunned down 17 innocent people and wounded 17 more at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. A former student expelled for disciplinary issues, Cruz would later tell interrogators he was doing what the voices in his head told him to do: burn, kill, destroy.
Loneliness. Friends? No friends? Or what kind of loneliness? I mean, everybody gets lonely.
Solitude.
Solitude? You don't have a lot of friends?
No.
Okay. All right, you go to the hospital, the doctors clear you. And you're talking about demons. What are the demons?
The voices.
Well, tell me about it. What are the voices about?
It's another voice, the evil side.
Okay. And how long has that voice been going on?
Years.
Okay. When did it start, you think? When your mom passed?
It started, worse when my mom passed.
Okay. Did it start how many years before your mom passed, do you think?
When my father died.
Okay. Did you ever tell anybody about the voice? Never? And what does the voice say to you? Well, what does it tell you to do?
Burn, kill, destroy.
Okay, burn, kill, destroy what?
Anything.
Okay. But have you ever burned, killed, or destroyed anything?
But what led to this catastrophic breakdown and the life sentence that followed? The day after the massacre, Nicolas Cruz stood before a judge, emotionless as he was, on March 7th, 2018. A grand jury indicted him on 34 counts total, 17 for murder, 17 for attempted murder. Prosecutors made it clear they were going for the death penalty, citing 5 aggravating factors that made this case one of the worst in Florida's legal history. Despite the severity of his crimes, the prosecutors will try to blame his behaviors on his alleged developmental disability and described him as consumed by sadness and depression.
Delayed in language, he was delayed, gross motor, fine motor.
Okay. Did you ever see him happy?
I see him happy sometimes,
Okay.
and then a lot of times I saw him. Most time, that's what I remember him. There was no real expression of emotion.
Okay.
Judge Elizabeth Scherer ruled that Cruz's confession could be released to the public. When it was, the footage was haunting.
Just fucking kill me.
But the road to trial would be anything but quick. The defense needed more time. Then the pandemic struck. What should have been a swift trial dragged on, delayed into 2021 and beyond. After years of delays, the moment finally came. On October 20th, 2021, Nicolas Cruz stood before the court and pleaded guilty to all charges: 17 counts of murder and 17 counts of attempted murder. In a hushed courtroom filled with victims' families, Cruz gave a brief, stumbling statement. He said he was sorry for what he did, that he lived with nightmares every day.
I am very sorry for what I did, and I have to live with it every day. And that if I were to get a second chance, I will do everything in my power to try to help others. And I am doing this for you, and I do not care if you do not believe me. And I love you, and I know you don't believe me, but I have to live with this every day. And it brings me nightmares, and I can't live with myself sometimes, but I try to push through because I know that's what you guys would want me to do. I hate drugs, and I believe this country would do better if everyone would stop smoking marijuana and doing all these drugs and causing racism and violence out in the streets. I'm sorry, and I can't even watch TV anymore. And I'm trying my best to maintain my composure, and I just want you to know I'm really sorry. And I hope you give me
It was a moment heavy with emotion, but for many, it wasn't enough. The wounds were still raw, the trauma still fresh, and the horror of that day still echoed in the halls of Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. On July 18th, 2022, Nicolas Cruz's death penalty trial officially began, presided over by Judge Elizabeth Scherer. It was a phase that would last for months, filled with horror, heartbreak, and a bitter battle between prosecution and defense.
An appropriate penalty in this case. And each of you
individually gets to decide what is mitigation to you. It is not limited to the facts of the case. It is not limited to Nicholas's background, his character, his life. It can be anything that you see or you hear in this courtroom. And it can be anything that you feel in your heart is mitigation. Please understand.
Just days into the trial, jurors were shown an overwhelming trove of digital evidence. Among it, an 18-page list of Cruz's Google searches. These weren't just red flags, they were blood red warnings. Phrases like "how to become a school shooter" sent chills through the courtroom. On August 4th, the prosecution rested its case.
Think about it, and we know from looking at his YouTube comments and his searches, he was certainly thinking about it. In fact, he told, I think it was Dr. Denny or Dr. Scott, that he'd been watching the Columbine when he was 13 or 14 years old, the Columbine shooting. So we know he's been talking about it for a long time and thinking about it for a long time.
It didn't help that while in jail, Cruz got into violent altercations. Surveillance footage showed him attacking a Broward County deputy, lunging and striking him before being restrained. These outbursts only reinforced the image of a volatile and dangerous individual, further damaging any hope his defense might have had in portraying him as remorseful or mentally unfit. While the defense countered with a tragic portrait of Cruz's life, they argued he was born brain damaged, a result of his birth mother's substance abuse during pregnancy. They claimed a system had failed him, mental health services, schools, child protection agencies, all missing the warning signs. But prosecutors hit back hard.
So do you disagree with the diagnosis of neurodevelopmental disorder associated with fetal alcohol exposure?
Well, I disagree with it because it's not a diagnosis that we can use. It is in the DSM-5 TR, it's in clinical conditions for further review. And specifically in that section, it says that you can't use that diagnosis.
By September 14th, 2022, the defense rested. 2 weeks later, on September 27th, the prosecution's rebuttal began. It ended with a bombshell.
Hello, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people with an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds.
Cruz's online footprint showed videos encouraging closing arguments were delivered on October 11th, 2022, setting the stage for the jury to decide, would Nicolas Cruz live or die?
The defendant had a plan, and we discussed it. He carried it out. Tracer rounds, you all know my name. He wanted to be known. That was the goal of his plan, not just to kill at least 20 people, but when you see me on the news, you'll know who I am.
On October 13th, 2022, after months of harrowing testimony and emotional appeals, the jury returned its decision, life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. While they unanimously agreed that the aggravating factors, like the brutality of the attack and the number of victims, were proven beyond a reasonable doubt, they could not unanimously agree that those outweighed the mitigating circumstances presented by the defense. Under Florida law at the time, that meant Cruz would be spared the death penalty.
Count 1, victim Luke Hoyer. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nicolas Cruz was previously convicted of another capital felony or felony involving the use or threat of violence to another person. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. Nicholas Cruz created a great risk of death to many persons. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Luke Hoyer was committed while Nicholas Cruz was engaged in the commission of a burglary. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Luke Hoyer was especially heinous, atrocious, or cruel. Yes. We, the jury, unanimously find that the state has established beyond a reasonable doubt the existence of the aggravating factor. The first-degree murder of Luke Hoyer was committed.
The verdict sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Nearly every family of the murdered victims expressed fury. One after another, they stood before the court delivering emotional victim impact statements, declaring that Cruz deserved to die for what he had done. Many criticized not only the decision itself, but the conduct of Cruz's defense attorneys, as well as the law requiring a unanimous jury to impose capital punishment.
Would you say today's a tragic day in Broward County?
It's a stain. I'm sorry. It's just a stain, and I live here. It's a stain on this world that we live in. Broward County. It's really just a real
disappointment.
Disappointment.
Have you been robbed of justice? Have you been robbed of justice?
Absolutely. Absolutely have.
Would you say the state let your daughter down?
Yes. The jurors let us down. We have a jury system for a reason, and they let us down. They gave their personal beliefs, but they didn't go by the evidence. There was no mitigating factors. I'm sorry. Any mitigation was disproven clearly in the court. There's no reason, and if there is a reason, then why are we allowing people to just go randomly kill others? Is that what we're telling our society? But there's mitigating factors, a lot of hogwash.
Do you think Cruz should have been locked up long before February 14, 2018, at least in a mental institution or something along those lines?
Locked up, yes. Mental or otherwise, I don't know what the right thing is, but he should have been locked up. He should have been in shackles every time he came into the court. He should have been in shackles the entire time he was there. He's not a human being, he's an animal.
Laura, in the last 4 years, you guys have done so much work, Alyssa's Law, what you've been doing in the school board. What does this do for you guys to redouble your efforts outside of the courtroom? I mean, what's next?
So I would say that it just makes the fire inside.
Even Florida Governor Ron DeSantis weighed in, calling the verdict a miscarriage of justice. Just months later, in April 2023, he signed a bill lowering the threshold for a death penalty recommendation in Florida to an 8-4 jury vote. But for Nicholas Cruz, the sentence was final. On November 2nd, 2022, he was officially sentenced to 34 consecutive life terms, one for each of the 17 lives he ended, and 17 more for those he forever scarred.
Of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Luke Hoyer, the court imposes a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Count 2 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Martin Duque Anquiano, the court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 3 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Gina Montalto. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 4 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Alexander Schachter. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 5 of the indictment, the murder in the first degree of Elena Petty. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 6 of the indictment for the murder in the first degree of Alyssa Al-Hadef. The court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. To count 7 of the indictment for the murder in the first degree of Nicholas Dworet, the court imposes a mandatory life sentence without the possibility of parole. Count 8 for the murder in the
Justice for many felt incomplete. As the outrage over the Parkland verdict still echoed in courtrooms and headlines, another chilling case was already taking shape, one that would shock the nation for how young, how brutal, and how senseless it was. Just 3 years after the Parkland massacre, on May 9th, 2021, tragedy struck again, this time in the quiet community of St. Johns County, Florida. 14-year-old Tristan Bailey was reported missing on what should have been a joyful Mother's Day morning. By 9 a.m., her family was frantically searching the neighborhood. When she couldn't be found, her mother called 911. The truth would soon unfold, and it would be unimaginable. Earlier that morning, 14-year-old Aiden Fucci had contacted Tristan through a mutual friend, coaxing her into sneaking out in the middle of the night. A surveillance camera would later show two figures, believed to be Fucci and Bailey, walking together at 1:45 a.m., but just under 2 hours later, the same camera captured someone sprinting back, alone, clutching a pair of white shoes. Police soon zeroed in on Fucci. At first, he claimed they parted ways after walking for a while. Then, the story changed. He said Tristan tried to touch him, that he pushed her, and she hit her head. But the evidence told a far darker story. And as if that weren't disturbing enough, while sitting in the back of a patrol car after her disappearance, Fucci took selfies and posted to Snapchat with disturbing captions.
We're having fun in a fucking cop car. Yep. Tristan. What's up, guys? Tristan, if you fucking walk out the damn... When you see this in a...
What investigators would soon uncover would stun even the most experienced detectives. Around 6 p.m. on that same day, May 9th, a local resident walking near a retention pond at the end of Saddlestone Drive, just south of Jacksonville, made a chilling discovery: the lifeless body of a young girl. By 8 p.m., authorities confirmed the unimaginable. It was Tristan Bailey. She had been stabbed 114 times. 49 of those wounds were defensive, a heartbreaking indication that Tristan fought with everything she had to stay alive. Nearby, investigators recovered a buck knife from the pond. Its tip was broken off and later matched to a fragment embedded in Tristan's scalp. That same night, just before midnight, police arrived at Aiden Fucci's house. What they found there removed all doubt: a knife sheath matching the murder weapon, blood-stained clothes, and a chilling discovery: Fucci had told friends he planned to murder someone by taking them into the woods and stabbing them, and that it would happen within a month. He wasn't lying. By 3 a.m. on May 10th, Fucci was arrested for second-degree murder. That charge was upgraded to first degree once the full scope of evidence was reviewed. The case got even more twisted. His mother, Crystal Smith, was arrested for tampering with evidence as she was caught on surveillance camera washing her son's bloody jeans after the murder. She was later released. In July 2021, a full police report revealed even more disturbing details. Fucci frequently fantasized about killing, spoke of hearing voices calling him a disappointment, and even pretended to stab his ex-girlfriend during outbursts. Aiden Fucci wasn't just a teenager with issues, he was a ticking time bomb. On February 6, 2023, just before jury selection was set to begin, Aiden Fucci pled guilty to the first-degree murder of Tristan Bailey. He openly admitted to the killing. Because he was only 14 years old at the time of the crime, Fucci was ineligible for the death penalty under Florida law. That meant his sentencing range stretched from 40 years to life without parole. In a letter submitted to the court, Fucci apologized for the pain he caused to Tristan's family and friends. But words meant nothing now. On March 19th, the court courtroom filled with heartbreak as Tristan's family, friends, teachers, police officers, and even Fucci's own grandmother gave emotional impact statement.
He's not the boy that I knew. I don't know what happened. I mean, he's always been good and happy. I'm so sorry. He has a good family and we don't condone it.
Members of her cheerleading squad broke down in tears. Her family described a pain so deep it would never fade. Then, on March 24th, 2023, the sentence was handed down.
Counsel, is there any legal reason why this court cannot impose sentence at this time? No, sir. Mr. Fucci, having entered a plea of guilty to the crime of first-degree murder, I adjudicate you guilty of the premeditated first-degree murder of Tristan Bailey. I sentence you to life in prison. Because of your age, you are eligible for review of the sentence in 25 years. I order the Department of Corrections to notify you when you are eligible to apply.
Life in prison. Fucci was only 16 years old when sentenced, but the brutality, the planning, and the cold indifference behind his actions sealed his fate. And just when you thought it couldn't get any darker, our next case takes us to Georgia, and it's one that shook an entire high school to its core. On September 4th, 2024, 14-year-old Colt Gray allegedly opened fire at Appalachia High School near Winder, Georgia. 11 people were shot, 2 students and 2 teachers killed, and 7 more injured.
I just hope that the shooter finds God and that God forgives what they did.
Hours before the massacre, the school received a cryptic warning call. A voice claimed that 5 schools would be targeted, and Appalachia would be the first. Then came another call, this one from Gray's own mother, begging administrators to locate her son and warning of an extreme emergency. They couldn't find him in time. Gray had already begun setting things in motion. He asked a chilling question in his first period class. What would Appalachia do if there was an active shooter? A teacher reported the comment, but tragically, his next teacher never got that warning. At 9:42 a.m., Colt sent his dad a haunting text. "I'm sorry, it's not her fault. You're not to blame for any of it." Then he vanished into a school bathroom. At 10:20 a.m., Gray attempted to re-enter his algebra class. When a student peered through the door window and saw the gun, they refused to open it. What happened next was chaos. Gray opened fire in a nearby classroom, hitting multiple victims and killing student Christian Angelo. He moved down the hall, firing more shots. Teachers triggered panic buttons, setting off a full hard lockdown. One teacher was killed after stepping into the hallway, and his students tried desperately to stop the bleeding using their own shirts. Another wounded student slammed his classroom door shut, realizing only afterward that he had been shot. Law enforcement arrived within minutes. Colt Gray surrendered without resistance to 3 school resource officers.
The team had no warning signs prior to the shooting, including from school.
The aftermath was unbelievable, and students were evacuated to the football field, many still in shock. 4 people dead, 7 wounded, hundreds traumatized. Among the victims were 14-year-old students Mason Schermerhorn and Christian Angulo, and 2 beloved teachers, Christina Aramite, a 53-year-old math teacher, and Richard Aspinwall, 39, a math teacher and assistant football coach. In the wake of the shooting, 8 students and 1 teacher were injured, 7 of them from gunfire. Others were hospitalized for panic attacks, overwhelmed by the chaos they had witnessed. Victims were rushed to Piedmont Athens Regional and Grady Memorial in Atlanta as the school community reeled. It was shocking to come to terms with the fact that the perpetrator of this senseless crime was 14-year-old Colt Gray, a freshman who walked those very halls just hours before opening fire. He now faces 4 counts of felony murder, and prosecutors are pushing to try him as an adult.
For felony murder, so for each count, the maximum penalty is that you could be punishable by death, by imprisonment for life, without parole, or by imprisonment for life, with the possibility of parole. If you have any questions about these charges, then I would urge you to discuss those with your attorney.
Investigators say he used a semi-automatic AR-15 style rifle to carry out the shooting. And what's even more disturbing, that weapon was a gift.
You're currently charged with 2 counts of felony murder in the 2nd degree. You're charged with 4 counts of felony involuntary manslaughter. You're charged with 8 counts of felony cruelty to children in the second degree. Now, for these offenses, for the felony murder counts in the second degree, felony murder in the second degree, the maximum penalty for each count is up to 30 years imprisonment. For felony involuntary...
Gray's father, Colin O'Gray, age 54, now faces 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter, 2 counts of second-degree murder, and 8 counts of cruelty to children.
That Colt's behavior had become more aggressive over the past few months. He used his knife, or a knife that was in Colt's possession, to cut himself.
Was there a discussion between Colin Gray and Marcy Gray about removing the guns from Colt's access?
There was.
And
why? Because despite being warned by deputies about his son's threats and unstable nature, he still bought the gun as a Christmas present.
The complaint went to your other address, or your previous address, and that's where we just came from, and it wasn't them.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it wasn't.
I don't know if, so we ran I had your name and date of birth, so
yeah.
That's how we got this address. So,
I mean, I swear to God, we've been up to school. I've been up to school, like, I'm on first name. I just was up there 3 days ago for his finals, talking to the principal, like, look, make sure Colt's good. He gets flustered and under pressure. He doesn't really think straight. Can we just, just kind of put your arms around him, get him through 7th grade? I just want to make sure he's good. Like, I mean, we're up there all the time talking to school. Okay. If you talk to that school, they'll know exactly who I am. I'll say that. Okay. I mean, because I'm up there that much,
checking in on him.
Yeah, sure. I just want to make sure he's good. Yeah. So I'm a little taken back by the whole thing, but I can tell you this, I take that very serious, and so does he, as a matter of fact. He's...
Say his first name's Colt.
Colt, C-O-L-T.
One horrific decision, one loaded gift, and a chain of destruction that can never be undone. Colt Gray's trial has entered a new phase, and the charges against him are nothing short of shocking. The 14-year-old, who already made headlines for the horrific shooting at Appalachia High School, now faces a staggering range of charges, including malice murder, felony murder, aggravated battery, aggravated assault, and cruelty to children in the first degree. The severity of these charges reflects the unimaginable terror Gray unleashed that day. He has pleaded not guilty, and given the gravity of his actions, is being tried as an adult. As the trial continues, the community waits for justice for the victims and their families. Both Colt's and his father's futures are now uncertain, with the courtroom serving as the battleground for the consequences of their actions. On February 11th, 2023, 16-year-old Brianna Gay, a British transgender girl, was murdered in what authorities described as a cold, premeditated attack. Her killers, Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe, were just 15 years old. The two lured Brianna into Colchith Linear Park, a quiet, wooded area in Cheshire, under the false promise of a meetup. Once there, they ambushed her with knives, stabbing her multiple times in a brutal assault. Brianna was discovered lying on a path, fatally wounded, and was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, the community is left wondering what could drive two teenagers to carry out such a calculated and savage act. To put things in perspective, you need to know that before the murder, Scarlett Jenkinson had developed a disturbing obsession with serial killers. She watched documentaries, took notes on notorious murderers like Jeffrey Dahmer and John Wayne Gacy, and even used the Tor browser to access videos of torture and murder on the dark web.
But it developed into something real. By January 2023, you had a real desire to kill someone, which you shared with Eddie, asking him to help. You had a list of people you wanted to kill, mostly people you did not like. You did like Brianna, though. You were drawn to her. You thought she was different and interesting.
On the morning of February 11th, 2023, Jenkinson messaged Brianna Gay, telling her to meet at Colchith Library later that day. Just before 1 p.m., Brianna left her home in Birchwood, letting her mother know she was going to meet Jenkinson. At 1:53 p.m., she arrived and met Jenkinson and Ratcliffe, whom she'd never met before, outside the library. Surveillance footage last captured the three teens heading toward Colchith Linear Park just after 2 p.m. But poor Brianna had no idea that this meetup was a trap. Jenkinson had lured her there under the false pretense of taking drugs. Minutes later, the ambush began. Armed with a hunting knife, Jenkinson and Ratcliffe attacked Brianna. A nearby couple walking their dog saw the teens from a distance. Spooked by being spotted, the killers fled the scene. The couple then stumbled upon Brianna's bloodied body lying face down on the path and called emergency services. Paramedics arrived, but it was too late. Brianna Gay was pronounced dead at 4:02 p.m. A post-mortem was conducted to determine the exact cause of Brianna Gay's death. The results revealed that she had been stabbed 28 times, with wounds concentrated on her head, neck, chest, and back. The attack was described as extremely brutal and punishing, underscoring the sheer violence of the crime.
I don't want to dwell on the murder itself, but it was brutal. The injuries inflicted with the knife Eddie had bought a few weeks earlier were awful. There were 28 deep stab wounds to the head, neck, chest, and back, some causing bony damage, showing considerable force was used.
The very next day, on February 12, 2023, both Eddie Ratcliffe and Scarlett Jenkinson, just 15 years old, were arrested simultaneously at their respective homes in Lee and Warrington. According to Detective Chief Superintendent Mike Evans, the killing appeared to be a targeted attack.
On suspicion of murder, obviously you are under caution, so anything you say is getting recorded. Okay.
With me being suspect is because I was the last person seen it, or how come I'm a suspect?
Pardon?
How come I'm a suspect?
How come you're a
Is
suspect?
it because I'm the last person that's seen it, or is it?
You Eddie?
Yeah.
Eddie, you're locked up suspicion of murder, alright? You don't have to say anything, but you may harm you to mention when questioned. So you later line in court, and if you do say we evidence, do you understand?
Yeah, hang on, let's unlock these.
I can explain it.
No, listen.
Right, listen.
Do it all on into it, alright? You're going to take it to the wrong corner, you'll be interviewed about it, they'll ask you questions, alright?
On February 15th, both teens were officially charged with murder. They were denied bail and placed in youth detention. As the case moved forward, the chilling details of their preparation and brutality began to unfold. But one question remained: why? The trial began at Manchester Crown Court on November 27, 2023. Given the sensitive nature of the case and the young ages of those involved, strict reporting restrictions were imposed. Among the most disturbing revelations made during the trial was that Jenkinson had previously attempted to poison Brianna with a large dose of ibuprofen. Jenkinson had hoped the death would be interpreted as a suicide, knowing that Brianna had struggled with her mental health.
You tried to poison her by getting her to take ibuprofen tablets, which made her ill. You made a plan to kill a boy in Linear Park by slashing his throat and stabbing him.
When that attempt failed, the two teens conspired to use a hunting knife, purchased by Ratcliffe, to finish what they had started. Chilling text messages submitted as evidence revealed Jenkinson's obsession with Brianna, describing her as really different and really pretty. Even more disturbingly, Ratcliffe had messaged Jenkinson with a sadistic question. He wanted to see if it will scream like a man or a girl.
And I want to see if it will scream like a man or a girl.
The trial spanned 3 weeks, concluding on December 20th, 2023. After just under 5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts for both Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe in the murder of Brianna Gay. The judge indicated that life sentences were inevitable, and the following day ruled to lift the anonymity orders protecting the teens' identities, citing the exceptional nature of the case and a strong public interest in full transparency.
Before you can be considered for release. But how long you will actually serve will not be decided today. You will only be released if, in the future, it is decided that you no longer present a danger.
On February 2nd, 2024, the sentencing hearing took place at Manchester Crown Court. For the first time, the public would hear the names of the 2 teenagers responsible for Brianna's brutal murder. The courtroom heard devastating victim impact statements from Brianna's parents and stepfather, describing the profound loss, trauma, and lifelong grief they now carry. The judge handed down life sentences to both. Jenkinson was given a minimum term of 22 years, and Ratcliffe 20 years.
Scarlett Jenkinson, for the murder of Brianna Ghey, you will be detained at His Majesty's pleasure. I set the minimum term at 22 years, less the 352 days that you have spent on remand. Eddie Ratcliffe, for the murder of Brianna Ghey, you will be detained at His Majesty's pleasure. I set the minimum term at 20 years, less the 352 days that you have spent on remand.
This means Jenkinson won't be eligible for parole until January 2044, and Ratcliffe until January 2042. On November 30th, 2021, terror unfolded at Oxford High School in Oxford Township, Michigan. A 15-year-old student, Ethan Crumbly, entered the school armed with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. Within minutes, he opened fire in the hallways, killing 4 fellow students and injuring 7 others, 6 students and 1 teacher. The attack shocked the nation not just because of its brutality, but because it exposed deeply disturbing warning signs that had been overlooked or ignored in the days leading up to the massacre.
A little bit distant.
What do you mean by that?
More just kind of like, it felt like it was a little bit of an inconvenience to be there.
According to students, panic set in the moment a voice over the school intercom warned of an active shooter. Teachers immediately began locking doors, covering windows, and barricading classrooms, making it clear to everyone this was not a drill. Most students had not come in that day due to prior rumors of the shooting circulating. At 12:51 p.m., the first 911 call came in, one of nearly 100 that would flood emergency lines in the minutes that followed. Responding officers, including a school resource officer and a second deputy, arrived within minutes. They located and arrested Ethan Crumbly without resistance. At the time of his arrest, he still had 7 rounds of ammunition in the handgun and was carrying 2 fully loaded 15-round magazines. The entire attack lasted about 5 minutes, concentrated in the southern wing of the school. Investigators would later recover 32 spent shell casings from the scene. 4 students lost their lives in the shooting. Madison Baldwin, 17, Hannah Street Juliana, 14, and Tate Meyer, 16, were killed at the scene. The following day, 17-year-old Justin Schilling died from his injuries. 8 others were wounded, 7 students and a teacher. The last victim was released from the hospital over a month later.
Who took the gun into that school and shot Hannah St. Juliana, age 14, a volleyball player and a basketball player, and her father asked me to tell you that she was one of the happiest and most joyful kids. Madison Baldwin, age 17, a talented artist and big sister. Tate Meyer, a junior football player and honor student. Mr. Meyer asked me when I spoke to him if I had children, and I said that I did, and that I would treat this case like these are my own children. Justin Schilling, age 15, co-captain of the Oxford bowling team and a golfer. We are charging this individual.
Following his arrest, Ethan Crumbly was swiftly arraigned on charges of homicide and attempted homicide. While these initial charges allowed authorities to keep him in custody, the full legal weight of the case would soon become clear. On December 1st, 2021, Crumbly was formally charged as an adult with terrorism causing death. 4 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, and felony firearm possession. The terrorism charge marked a historic first. Never before had such a charge been applied in a school shooting, with prosecutors arguing that the act was intended to terrorize the entire Oxford High School community.
With 1 count of terrorism causing death, 4 counts of first-degree murder, 7 counts of assault with intent to murder, and 12 counts of possession of a firearm and the commission of a felony.
Despite his age, the severity of the crimes led the judge to deny bail and remand Crumbly to the Oakland County Jail. At his initial court appearances, a not guilty plea was entered on his behalf. Legal proceedings stretched into the following year. Crumbly's defense initially indicated they would pursue an insanity defense and requested a psychiatric evaluation. However, in a dramatic shift on October 24th, 2022, Crumbly pleaded guilty to all 24 charges.
Yes. Is it true that you exited the bathroom approximately 12:51 p.m. on November the 30th, 2021?
Yes.
Is it true that when you exited the bathroom, you began shooting at students and staff members of the Oxford High School?
Yes.
Judge, for the specific factual basis, I'm going to do counts 2 through 5 and then count 1.
Please.
Regarding count 2, first-degree murder. Is it true on November the 30th, 2021, while you were in Oxford, County of Oakland, you deliberately, with the intent to kill, and with premeditation, use a 9mm handgun and shoot and kill Miss Madison Baldwin?
Yes.
Is it true on November the 30th, 2021, while you were in Oxford, County of Oakland, you did deliberately, with the intent to kill and with premeditation, use a 9mm handgun and shoot and kill Mr. Tate Meyer?
Yes.
Is it true on November the 30th, 2021, while you were in Oxford, County of Oakland, you deliberately, with the intent to kill and with premeditation, did use a 9mm handgun and shoot and kill Miss Hannah St. Julian?
Yes.
Is it true on November the 30th, 2021, while you were in Oxford, County of Oakland, you did deliberately, with the intent to kill and with premeditation, use a 9mm handgun to shoot and kill Mr. Justin Schilling?
Yes.
Could you repeat your answer, sir?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it true that on November the 30th, 2021, when you committed the crimes of first-degree premeditated murder in Oxford County of Oakland, that you acted knowingly, willfully, deliberately, meaning you consider the pros and cons of your actions, then you made the decision, after substantial reflection, to commit first-degree premeditated murder?
Yes.
Is it true that you knew or had reason to know that your choices on November the 30th, 2021, in committing these crimes would cause a substantial likelihood of death or serious injury?
Yes.
Is it true when you committed these crimes you intended to put students and teachers in fear, and you intended to cause panic among the Oxford High School community?
Yes.
Is it true that your actions on November the 30th, 2021 caused the deaths of Madison Baldwin, Tamir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling?
Yes.
Prosecutors also charged Ethan Crumbly's parents, James and Jennifer Crumbly, with 4 counts each of involuntary manslaughter. Evidence presented during the proceedings revealed that James Crumbly had purchased the handgun as a Christmas gift for Ethan just 4 days before the shooting. Despite Ethan displaying disturbing behavior at home and in school, including drawing violent imagery and writing messages like "help me" and "the thoughts won't stop," the parents allegedly failed to take appropriate action. On the morning of the shooting, school officials confronted the Crumblies about Ethan's concerning behavior and urged them to take him home, but they refused, leaving him at school without checking his backpack or questioning whether he had access to a weapon.
Parents arrive to the school and not take their student home.
If you tell them they need to.
Correct.
Okay. So what did you do?
I was a little bit taken aback by that. My statement was, I want him seen within 48 hours. I'll be following up.
Okay. Did you ask them to take him home, or did you ask them to take him to get?
I asked them to take him to get there.
Okay. And what was the response when you said follow up? You were going to follow up and it needed to happen in 48 hours.
I would describe it as compliant. Okay. I didn't have a reason to believe it wouldn't happen. I didn't feel 100% confident that it would happen.
And what was your primary concern at that moment?
My primary concern was that Ethan would not be alone.
And why didn't you want him to be alone?
Because suicidal ideation, I don't want a student left alone. Because I care about my students, and I cared about him in that moment particularly because I thought it was a really rough situation to be showing signs of needing help, of needing of needing support, and it felt like he got the opposite when I tried to give him that help and support.
Did he ever cry?
No.
Did, when he got up and you said that to him, did he say goodbye to his parents? Did his parents say goodbye to him?
I don't remember them saying goodbye to him.
Did anybody hug him? Touch him?
Both parents were arrested shortly after the charges were announced in December 2021, following a brief manhunt after they failed to appear at their arraignment. Prosecutors argued that their gross negligence directly enabled the massacre, while the defense maintained that they had no way of knowing their son would carry out such an act. In early 2024, both James and Jennifer Crumbley were found guilty of involuntary manslaughter in separate trials. The verdicts marked the first time in U.S. history that parents were held criminally responsible for a school shooting committed by their child. Legal experts widely regard the case as a precedent-setting moment, one that could reshape how the justice system treats parental responsibility in mass shootings involving minors.
It is the sentence of this court, Ms. Crumbley, that you serve 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections. You will have credit for 858 days. State costs are $272. There's a crime victims' rights fee of $130. You and your agents may not have any contact with the families of Madison Baldwin, Tate Meir, Hannah St. Juliana, and Justin Schilling. I will issue another ruling with regard to contact with your son, the shooter. Excuse me. As to defendant James Crumbley, it is the sentence of this court that you serve 10 to 15 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections, that you receive credit for 858 days, that you pay state costs in the matter of $272, that there is a crime victims' rights fee of $130, that you or your agents have no contact with the families of Madison Baldwin, Tate Meir.
On December 8, 2023, Crumbley was formally sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Life without the possibility of parole, credit for 8 days served. Counts 2 through 5. Homicide, first degree, premeditated murder, juvenile defendant. Sentence of the court is that the defendant shall serve the rest of his life without the possibility of parole with the Michigan Department of Corrections, credit for 8 days served. On count 6 through 12, assault with intent to murder. On each of the counts, defendant is sentenced to 18 years and 9 months to 80 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections, credit for 8 days served. On counts 13 through 24, those being felony firearm, defendant is sentenced to 2 years with the Michigan Department of Corrections on each of those counts with credit for 730 days served. Counts 1 through 12 are concurrent to each other, and counts 13 through 24 are concurrent to each other. Count 1 is consecutive to count 13, count 2 is consecutive to count 14, count 3 is consecutive to count 15, count 4 is consecutive to count 16, count 5 is consecutive to count 17, count 6 is consecutive to count 18, count 7 is consecutive to count 19, count 8 is consecutive to count 20, count 9 is consecutive to count 21, count 10 is consecutive to count 22. Count 11 is consecutive to 23, and count 12 is consecutive to count 24. All of those consecutive counts are by reason of the felony firearm statute. Is there a challenge?
Before his sentencing, he addressed the courtroom directly, offering an apology and stating, "Any sentence that the victims ask for, I ask that you do impose it on me. I am truly sorry."
Could not stop myself, but I am the one who led to why we are here today. I do not diminish any ability to anyone who could have stopped me, of anyone of a school or parents. They did not know, and I did not tell them what I plan to do, so they are not at fault of what I've done. I am a really bad person. I have done terrible things that no one should ever do. I have lied, been not trustworthy. I've hurt many people, and that's what I've done, and I'm not denying it, but that's not who I plan on to be. Whatever sentence it is, I do plan to be better than I am. I don't know if you'll believe that, but records of 15, 20, 25 years can show that it will change. Because it may not show it now with only 2 years of records, but I am trying. And all I want is for the people I hurt to just have a final sense of culpability that justice has somewhat been served in any capacity that they can recognize it with. Any sentence that they ask for, I ask that you do impose it on me, because I want them to be happy and I want them to feel secure and safe, and I do not want them to worry another day, because I really am sorry for what I've done, for what I've taken of them. I cannot give it back.
Crumbly now serves his sentence in adult prison, his name permanently tied to one of the most chilling school shootings in recent memory. These stories are more than just courtroom headlines. They're devastating reminders of lives stolen, futures shattered, and pain that ripples far beyond a single moment of violence. From the chilling calculation of teen killers to the heartbreak of parental negligence, each case forces us to ask, how do we stop this from happening again? If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button to help it reach more people. Subscribe for more true stories that matter, and let us know in the comments what case you think the world needs to hear next.